actually, it's one of the things we're most proud about. Of the 10 schools admission organization, which are the sort of 10 big boarding schools that you all know of which Hill is one of, we have the highest percentage of students on financial aid. 44, 45% of our students receive some sort of financial aid. We don't have the most dollars, but we distribute that as much as we can to make sure that every student that needs some help gets some help. We do have to turn a lot of kids away.
What would your goal be? What would you like to see that percentage at?
I think that percentage is actually pretty good. What I'd like to see is be able to fund their full need. So we have something which we call the gap. Students, for any of you who've had children that have gone through financial aid process in college setting, you send all your materials away to sort of a clearinghouse, and they come back to the school and they say, the need of this family is X. So of $50,000, they might say, your family can pay $30,000 based on assets and how many other kids you have in college and income and that sort of thing. And then they say, so they can pay $30,000, your tuition is $50,000, there's $20,000 there that we would like to give in financial aid, but we can only, let's say, afford 10. So the gap is $10,000. We say we're gapping kids. We can't meet that gap. So it's not that we want 100% of our students here on financial aid. We still want students with the ability to pay the full tuition, but we want to reduce that gap. I don't know that I have a specific goal. Our goal around financial aid is that we have the most financial aid per student of all the 40 top boarding schools in the country, which currently is St. Andrew's School in Delaware. And they have the DuPont fortune to rely on in their endowment. But if we were to raise $50 million today, we would go from 22nd place, which is where we are right now, to first. So if anyone has their checkbook, you can get that done right now. Yes. Yeah.
Zach, Peter Sartorius.
Peter.
Where do you think the perception of the Hill School is relative to its peers among some of the groups that are important, like prospective students and their families, colleges and
Sure.
university, possible faculty?
There are three groups that we worry about. Can you hear back there?
Repeat the question?
Sorry, the question was, where is our sort of reputation among prospective students, colleges, parents, alumni? I'll start by saying there are three groups that we consider ourselves part of. First is this group of 40 boarding schools called ABOPS. I won't tell you what it stands for. It's the 40 best boarding schools in the country. Then there's a group called the 10 schools, which I mentioned before. They came together in the 1960s to form the SSAT exam. It's Andover, Exeter, Choate, Deerfield, Hotchkiss, Lawrenceville, Hill, Taft, Loomis, Chaffee, and St. Paul's, thank you. That's pretty good, I got 9 out of 10. Sort of the cream of the crop. We're thrilled to be a part of that group. We do a lot of work with those schools going around the country doing admissions fairs and that sort of thing. It's an admissions-based organization. And the third group is the Maple League, Mid-Atlantic Prep School League. Those are the schools, Hill, Lawrenceville, Hunn, Blair, Petty, and Mercersburg. And so we're always sort of trying to decide which group we want to focus on, where we're drawing kids from, that sort of thing. Overall, I think our reputation is, if I'm being very truthful and honest, I think our reputation is in the middle of all those groups and at the very bottom of the 10 schools in terms of where we have been over the last 10 or 15 years. I think, though, how the last couple of years at Hill, the end of David's administration and the beginning of my administration, has put Hill on a new trajectory where the buzz among prospective students, colleges, because we're seeing great uptick in our college matriculation, and people that matter and our alumni are feeling like Hill is really right now trying to reclaim its position as one of the top 10 schools in the country. That's important for sure, but we are also trying to stay true to ourselves. But we're a little tired of being, a little known secret, a hidden gem. We believe that the school has terrific bones, a terrific history, an incredible alumni legacy, and we want to reclaim that. And that's part of that is our fundraising campaign, but part of it is having the best teachers here. Part of that is getting out there and marketing ourselves better, and showcasing the success of our students and our faculty. It's not a great, I don't have an objective answer to that, but subjectively, that's about where we are.
Jack Emmons.
Jack.
Was it 53,000 per year is the tuition?
Correct.
How much of the cost to educate each student is that covered?
It's about $75,000 a year to educate a student. So the difference between our tuition is roughly $20,000. Difference between what we charge for tuition and what the true cost is, and we make up that difference through the endowment and through the Hill Fund. Yeah. So we draw about $7 million a year from the endowment, and our Hill Fund is about $3 million, $3 or $4 million a year. More this year than ever.
The percentage drawn down from the endowment is
4.88% over a 5-year trailing average.
good.
Anyone want to have a financial clinic? Approximately. And going down, we want it to go down.
Yeah.
Really important to go down to create intergenerational equity.
What is the endowment?
The endowment is $156 million as of yesterday. Not that I'm counting. We were in board meetings. Yes?
Zach, Charlie Milner, would you define family boarding school and give us examples of other family boarding school? Who else is in that
Sure.
market?
So the question is, would I define family boarding school, and who else would consider themselves family boarding schools? So most of you may know that anyone know what our original school name was?
The family boarding school.
The Family Boarding School for Young Men and Boys.
Wow.
And then that became a sort of a mouthful, right? So they started calling it the Family Boarding School, and then they said the school up on the hill, and then it became the Hill School, and you got it. So if you go back to our incorporation papers, it actually says the Family Boarding School for Young Men and Boys. To a certain extent, David Doherty started bringing back this concept of the family boarding school, and then when I got here, I said this is an incredible opportunity for us to brand ourselves around what matters to us. Family values, legacy, those are sort of the two pieces. So from a legacy standpoint, today we have 34% of our students are somehow related to former Hill students, whether through a parent, a grandparent, an uncle, or a sibling. We have not yet had the child of an alumna. I think we're within 5 years of that happening, and then I think one of them is on our faculty. Her daughter is about 5 years away from being a Hill student, so someone might beat her, but it's about right. How I define family boarding school is a school that has the rigor and resources of a large school with the nurturing and support of a small boarding school. I've been at a small boarding school. That's where I came from. It's about a 230 student boarding school. The nurture at that kind of school is unbelievable. Everyone knows everyone, you're in everyone's lives, but typically the rigor of a school like that is lacking. It's all nurture and no rigor. On the flip side, when you go to a place, I'll throw my old school under the bus, Exeter. The rigor at a school like that is extraordinary, but there's not much nurture in there. Sort of thrown into the wild there. So when you can combine those two things, that's what I think a family boarding school is. We've tried to define a benchmarking group of family boarding schools. It's a little bit of the category of one, so we're already the best family boarding school. I win something. But I think that there are some schools out there. Deerfield is pretty close. Deerfield has that feel to it. The Millbrook School in New York has that feel to it. I think Kent is one of the schools on our list. We think Blair actually has that feel to it now. It's about 500 students. So those are some of the schools. And there's some schools out in California that we think are similar. Thatcher School and Kate School are both in that mix as well. It's hard to, not many of them want to be called a family boarding school. We take great pride in that. So we're actually trying to get that trademarked. We're in the process of having that trademarked for what it's worth. So, yes.
Alton Hutchison, what percentage, if any, of the current student body are physically impaired, mobility impaired?
Sure.
And a corollary question is, how would you evaluate and rate the campus in terms of accessibility, and is there any focus on that from the standpoint of the capital?
Sure. So the question is around disability, percentage of our students that are disabled in any way, and accessibility on campus. How would I rate that? It's a very small number, but it's not zero. Cerebral palsy, we have 2 students with cerebral palsy. some hearing impaired students. We've had visually impaired students, not recently, and then it's not qualified under the Americans with Disability Act, but we have a lot of some learning disability on campus. The other thing we have lots of is injured kids on campus, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue around accessibility. When you're trying to get around crutches on a hill, that's not easy. And also, we've had a lot of concussions, sort of sweeping the nation right now. We had 60 concussions on campus last year, which creates all sorts of academic challenges in terms of catching those kids up. One of them was my son, who was a fourth former who missed 3 weeks of school and just finally caught up on his work the last 2 weeks of school here. Not easy to do. I would give us a B- on accessibility. We're tough graders at Hill. But all of our new buildings are very accessible. A lot of our old buildings are not. So this building is not a very accessible building. Our athletic center is not a very accessible building. But we're now under the ADA. As soon as you really go in and touch any of your buildings, you've got to do it right. So I would say that in our campus plan, since most of our work is going to be new buildings, it's going to be a high priority for us. Yes?
Ted Wilson, in thinking about the new buildings that you're building, one of the things that there are buildings on this campus that have lasted for over 100 years.
Yes.
And we're probably in one right now.
It was 1934, I think, where
Right,
we are.
so it's somewhere like that. But I've noticed a lot of your new buildings, they're stick built with vinyl exteriors and so forth, and they're not gonna last as long as this building's lasted. I know you're trying to stretch the dollars and do as much as you can, but I think the permanency of edifices that you build is important also.
Right. You got to think about how many horses died building this kind of building, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
This building has. How many of you know the story of the Widener buildings? Do you know? So, anyone know who the Wideners are? Sort of very wealthy family, Philadelphia Widener family. The two Widener boys. I'm going to digress for about 30 seconds here. Two Widener boys died on the Titanic, and their mother. One of them went to Hill, one went to Taft. They both ended up going to Harvard. So Harvard got more money, but she gave $300,000 to Hill and $300,000 to Taft in their memory. And at Hill, she said you can do at both places. Said, do anything you want with the money, but at Hill, my requirement is that all students take a swim test because she believed her children died by drowning. They probably died of hypothermia, but we'll leave that for another day. At Taft, they said you can never have a swimming pool. And so to this day, Taft does not have a swimming pool, and we have the Harry Widener swim test at Hill that all students have to pass. So sorry, I digress. You're absolutely right. I think it's very important that we build things to last. I think I would argue with you a little bit on some of our buildings. I think, for instance, the old middle school, which is now the academic center, that's a building that's very sturdy, built to last. I would say our Center for the Arts is not built to last. It might take a nuclear bomb to knock it down, but it's not.
We're thinking about those residential facilities that we are funding.
You think those aren't built to last?
The new ones that are up there, they basically look like a stick structure to me.
Well, they're wood framed. They're wood framed residential structures.
We're used to having stone buildings and steel and so forth.
Sure. I mean, we're not building any dormitories that wouldn't, where we'd have residential facilities within dormitories. Nothing we're planning to do there would be anything other than a masonry structure. When we're building our new science building, it'll be this type of edifice.
Okay.
We're looking to match. We just finished a year-long master campus planning process, and part of that was defining the look and feel of this campus and wanting to make sure that we did not build another building that looks like the Center for the Arts. And that we're trying to be consistent and unifying in our architecture. Yes.
Bill Levins. A lot of the things I've done in my life that I've enjoyed have involved using my hands. Are you doing anything with the mechanical arts in the building next door? You could call it vocational education, but it's also real world things. Because people build things.
Sure. So the old Arts and Crafts building, Widener Arts and Crafts building, went through a period of time when it was the alumni office. Maybe on one of your last reunions, that's where it was housed. about 3 years ago, the alumni office moved down the hill. I don't know if you've seen the new alumni house. It's beautiful. In that building, when I got to Hill, it was mothballed, with the exception of the wood shop in the basement. It was a disaster. It looked like someone had just left the Titanic. And so I said, this is right next to our dining hall, right next to our academic center, right in the core of campus. We have to do something with it. We didn't have any money to do anything with it at the time. So we basically we've gutted it and we've turned it into a sort of flexible meeting space. But as in our campus plan and our campaign, the idea is to bring it back as a center for visual arts. Maintain the wood shop in the basement, and then add a number of studio spaces upstairs for 2D and 3D fine arts. But the wood shop is alive and well. We have a strong fine woodworking program here at the Hill School, but it's also getting a dose of modernization. We've purchased a number of 3D printers over the last couple of years, as well as something called a CNC router, which I don't know if you know what it is. You design something using your computer, and then you sort of hit print, and it cuts it out of wood with a router. It's not the same as using your hands, but it does still require a lot of the same problem-solving techniques. But what's really neat about our program is that the CNC router is right next to the jigsaw. It's right next to the sander. So they're going back and forth. They're doing some fabrication using the 3D positive printers or the CNC negative printer, and then they're taking that piece over to the sander, and so there's a lot of that interaction going on. So we've just changed our entire third form curriculum for the arts. All students are required to take 3 terms of hands-on art now. 1 term of art, 1 term of music, and 1 term of either. So, and the performing arts are also very strong right now. Yeah, and then I'll
Very people. I noticed there's a trailer outside in this building, which is some sort of communication device. Could you explain something
Sure.
about what that program is?
Yeah, this afternoon we're dedicating the new John Silverstein class of 2009 electronic media studio. His class is reunioning here this weekend. He passed away at a very young age after graduating from Hill, and his family wanted to honor his biggest interest, which was filmmaking. So in this end of the other Widener building, we've put together it's basically a television studio, state-of-the-art television studio, which I encourage you to come this afternoon and see. The trailer outside is the mobile production unit, and they can take that anywhere, on campus or off campus, and produce a live television show. So now, in addition to Hill News, we have Hill TV, and they produce 3 camera shots with teleprompters, and go to camera 3, go to camera 2, it's that sort of thing.
That's a course that's also given to the students?
We offer video production, but it's also Hill TV is an afternoon program. So instead of playing sports 1 term, you could do Hill TV like you could do yearbook, that sort of thing.
The Lawrenceville football.
Right, and so we will be able to now live stream the Lawrenceville football game. One of the things we have done, so we don't necessarily need to do it ourselves, all of our athletic venues have web cameras built in. I think, Dave Loring, you've watched some hockey games, right? The hockey rink has web cameras, so for a very reasonable cost, you can go online and watch every athletic event you want, and control the camera from the comfort of your home or your phone or whatever you want. It's pretty cool. Unfortunately, it's very addictive too. I was watching our championship basketball team from Korea this year, and I kept texting the kids, wave to the camera, wave to the camera. Yes.
Jack, speaking of buildings, what is the status of upper school? I mean,
Upper school is in great shape. Have you been in?
I haven't. I just
About 5 years ago, we completely renovated upper school, and we made it co-ed, but not in the sense that college dorms are co-ed. The east side is girls and the west side is boys, and there are fire doors, double fire doors in the middle. Now,
With alarms.
with alarms and panic buttons and all that. But when we had a hurricane last year, I learned something the hard way. All of our electronic locks fail open when we lose power. So for 3 days, those doors were unlocked. So I stationed our faculty. We didn't want any hurricane, nonsense. So I stationed our faculty outside of those doors. But
What about the porch?
well, you can't get in. You have to have a key card to get in. You mean through the windows on the second floor? Yeah, those are the laundry rooms. They can't get in there, I don't think. But, you know, kids want to do what they want to do. They're going to figure out a way to do it, just like you all went.
will get in there.
Yeah, Bon Gardner, certainly. I knew Bon a little bit. I was at Gould Academy before I was here, and Bon was on the faculty at Gould after he left Hill, so that's a neat little connection that I have. But yeah, you know, like you guys found the steam tunnels, they find ways through. You know, Hill
We
kids
didn't
are.
have anything to find at the other end of the.
Old cigarette
No,
butts.
no comment, no comment on that.
What's on the fifth floor, the follow up on Pete's comments, what's on the fifth floor?
So that's, I was gonna just say the same. The one part of upper school that has not been renovated and is not used is the top floor, the fifth floor. And the reason for that is that there is not a fire truck tall enough in Pottstown to reach that floor. And so we don't have a permit to occupy that. But we've actually been doing a little bit of the math, and we said, well, we could fit 20 rooms up there at $50,000 a year pop. We can buy Pottstown a fire truck. But we're not looking to expand the size of the school. There was a question in the back? Oh, here, go ahead.
Hi, Bob Laughlin.
Hey, Bob.
You've obviously made great progress in, bringing the hill back to where it was.
Thank you.
How much longer do you think it'll take to get back to that level, and how do you measure that?
Well, if someone writes that $50 million check today, we're done. So the question
Well,
is,
that's all it's gonna take?
no, 175 would help. The question is sort of, we've done some great work working on the reputation and programs at the Hill. How much longer till we're there? Our peer schools are not standing still. Those other 10 schools are some of the best schools in the country with great leadership, great resources, great reputations, and great aspirations. So we have to, and I've said this to our faculty, the horses haven't run on this race, but we got to be galloping all the time to catch up and stay ahead. So we work really hard. I think a concerted effort over the next 5 to 10 years will put us back in the running in that group, and then we'll have to work really hard to stay in that group. The boarding school industry is struggling as a whole. Once you get out of the first couple of tiers of, first top 2 tiers, which I think we're in, third and fourth tier boarding schools, and some of you may have experience with some schools sort of off the beaten track, they're really struggling to fill their beds and charge $52,000 in tuition. And so most of them are turning to either very niche programs around things like learning disabilities or experiential education, that sort of thing that might draw kids in, or they're turning to international students. So many schools that were once 90% domestic students are now 50% domestic students, and that changes the experience. And so I think we're very fortunate to be in a position where we're back on the cusp of being in that first very top tier. We gotta work hard. Yes?
How many applicants do we have for second?
So the question is, what is our selectivity rate? This year we had over 900 applications and we offered 275 spots. We had 170 that accepted our 275 offers. So we had, roughly a 32% yield, 32% selectivity rate, and then we had about a 60% yield. Those are rough numbers. Those are historically good numbers. I won't say low. Low for selectivity is good, high for yield is good. So both of those are terrific numbers. And next year will likely be our largest enrollment ever. My first year here, we had 512 students that we opened with, and that was the highest. Right now we're tracking at 513, but I already know of 2 more that we've admitted, so I think we're gonna be closer to 520 by the time we open in September or August. So good news, turning away a lot of kids, but I think some of those numbers are inflated by the number of international applications that we get. Because we get 150 applications from China alone that didn't exist 5 years ago. Very hard, and they're all perfect score, high, full pay, perfect students, so it's really hard to be selective there. And the number of financial aid applications versus full pay applications is also tilted towards financial aid applications. But still, selective. Our peer schools are more selective than we are, like those 10 schools. I think Andover, my close friend of mine is the headmaster at Andover. He's my football teammate in high school, which is weird because he went to Exeter, but he's now the headmaster at Andover. But their selectivity rate was in the low teens, I think 12%, 11%. So we got a long way to go. We'll get there. Yes?
Any time constraints yet?
I I think I'm okay for a few more minutes.
What's the role of spirituality or religion per se at the Hill today?
So the question is, what is the role of spirituality and religion at Hill? I would say it is nowhere near where it was when you were here in terms of the sort of required aspect of that. But I would say it is strong compared to our peer schools that aren't, don't start with the name Saint something. St. Paul, St. Andrews, that sort of thing. We have 2 chapel periods a week. They come in the middle of the day, late morning for us on next year. I think it's Mondays and Thursdays this year. I think it's going to be Tuesdays and Fridays next year. We're changing our schedule a little bit. And we have 1 weekend a month that students are required, have a worship requirement. When I came here, it was a little bit different. We had 1 designated weekend per month where kids had to come on the second Sunday of the month to the chapel. I wanted to give kids more choice and more of engagement, a role in their decision about their spirituality. I didn't want to minimize it. I actually wanted to get them more engaged. So I said, you got to pick the weekend you come to. It's not just going to be the weekend we tell you to come, and you have to pick where. So most of our kids go to the chapel, but many of them will also go to the synagogue or the mosque or the Catholic church in town, that sort of thing. So in terms of being a place of spirituality beyond the required chapel program, I think we have a very spiritual community. We still say grace before every meal. We still talk about spirituality. We still are one of the only schools with a required religious studies, a year of religious studies requirement here. We have a very spiritual board of trustees. Preston is a very spiritual guy, and that filters down for sure. One of the other parts of our spiritual life program and our sort of ethical, moral program is our motto, whatsoever things are true, and our honor code, which very few schools actually have an honor code. You'd think they all do because you all went to Hill. We have this honor code written by our students, it's enforced by our students, and we were just recognized as one of 5 schools in the United States to earn the certification from the Council for Spiritual and Ethical Education. So I think those all come back to us being a place where we believe that spirituality is very important. We do believe in choice, but we are still we're still a Christian school. We're non-sectarian, but we're a Christian school with a Jewish headmaster. Yes.
Zach, with regard to the Pottstown initiative and interaction, I mean, I've heard about the cleanup.
Yep.
But are there thoughts or plans or actually being executed to provide resources
Yep.
to incubate
Yes.
businesses?
Yes.
Things like that?
So the question is, what beyond cleaning up, which is sort of traditional community service, what else are we doing in Pottstown to bring back the town? We are in the process of creating that plan. It's called the Hobart's Run Initiative. All the land that we sit on and many of the acres around Pottstown were originally part of the Hobart Farm. And Hobart's Run is a stream that actually empties into the Dell. So we've created this initiative, a little bit of camouflage to call it, instead of calling it the Hill Protection Zone, we're calling it the Hobart's Run Initiative. And we are mostly using the game plan created by Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster. We looked at a number of different places. Sandy Warner and one of your classmates turned me on to Yale. Obviously they've done a lot of work in New Haven, Trinity College in Hartford, Penn in Philadelphia, but they were all too large scale for us. And so Lancaster is it's about twice as big, maybe 3 times as big as Pottstown, but it's still similar scale. And Franklin and Marshall, John Fry, their president 10 years ago, 15 years ago, said this is a disaster zone, we've got to clean this up. And they partnered with the local hospital. They came up with a funny name like we did, James Street Initiative, and they did it, they started with small things like beautification and lighting and security issues, and then suddenly things started getting better and it just became exponentially better. We're very fortunate right now, the current president of F&M has 2 daughters that are Hill students. And so actually on Wednesday, I'm going down there for my 3rd trip to continue to learn from them and write up our own playbook. But we're partnering with the Borough Council, we're partnering with Pottstown's hospital, the Memorial Hospital. We're partnering with, there's now a community college in Pottstown, which is actually one of the fastest growing community colleges. So we're trying to find what they call the EDs and MEDs, the educational and medical organizations and nonprofits that can have an impact on the borough. And we just, for instance, we just had a $500,000 gift for this initiative, actually, and then another $100,000 gift for this initiative. So we hope to raise upwards of $5 million and then use that to implement a variety of prioritized physical initiatives as well as operational initiatives in town. I don't have quite the details yet, but I will tell you when I do. And I know it's important to you. Couple more questions? Yeah, right here.
Bill DeVries.
Hey, bud.
How can I get rid of my outstanding demerits?
Sorry. You could polish some silverware. That's the way I used to be able to do it, right? We actually have, it's interesting, last year our students created a new, our Student Government Association proposed a new program called the merit system to counteract the merit system. And so for acts going above and beyond the call of duty, when you weren't asked to do something, are considered, you can get a merit issued by a faculty member or a peer. And there is an equation for the number of merits that can wipe out a demerit. So I don't know what you have planned for the rest of the afternoon, but I could offer you some merits.
Are the students still required to do a daily job?
Yes. So we, work job, which we've changed, the PC name is now campus service, but everyone still says work job, I mean campus service. And it ranges from dining hall stuff to working in different offices around campus to deliver messages, to working in chapel, that sort of thing. So the cush job is being in the headmaster's office, because they just sit there. Yes?
Do the new kids still have to wear a funny-looking hat until we beat?
New kids have to have my haircut, not new boy beanies. Yeah, it's a great tradition, right? You have to wear new boy beanies until you beat Lawrenceville or until Thanksgiving.
Right.
It's called hazing. We get sued for that now. We don't, but we used to send them to, I don't know, when you all had your first child, you might have gotten one sent to you by the alumni office. Now we send sweaters. It's a little more gender balanced. There was a question in the back? Yeah.
Our son went here and graduated with two, and it was rated one deficiency he came away with. And exhibited by the fact when we went to visit his room, there were more clothes on the floor than there were.
Cleanliness.
When I was here, we used to have inspections.
Mhm. Right. So I think if I can repeat the question, it may have just been a statement of remorse. Not so much a question, but it's the notion of sort of room inspection and how do we get our kids to stay neat and develop those healthy living habits. It varies dorm to dorm. I mean, last year I walked around, I do evening duty once every 2 weeks, and I walked around the dorms and I was disgusted by some of the rooms. So I started taking pictures and posting them on Twitter. And so I started in Dutch Village, and I was making my way up campus here. And by the time I got to Wendell, the word had spread that Headmaster Lehman was posting pictures essentially to their parents of their rooms. And so they started cleaning them up by the time I got there. And the night it was 10 o'clock, and I didn't get over to Rolf and Foster. And so there were all these angry tweets going around from the students that said, "What do you mean you're not coming to Rolf and Foster? We've just had a cleaning frenzy." So I think it varies dorm to dorm, and dorm masters, and some are much more strict than others. Of course, the girls' dorms look great, and the boys' dorms are not. But you come down to my house, I have a fifth former and a rising third former, and trust me, their rooms drive me crazy every day. So who am I to complain or tell people what to do? But I'm going to just start using Twitter on my own children, and start posting pictures of their rooms every day. All right, I have time for 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
Just a quick one, Terry Rowan. I'm curious if there's any impact, negative or otherwise, about the nuclear stacks and where they are.
The Limerick
Yeah.
generating station.
Yeah.
We don't call it the nuclear power plant. We actually call it the cloud maker. That's what we tell our children. And so the funny story this year, when we go down to Lawrenceville every year, they come here, there's the traditional chant, wash that shirt, or kill the bill, or whatever. So they started yelling nuclear power, nuclear, that was their joke, because they have to drive up here. And so we responded, clean energy, clean energy. The answer is not really. I think, I'm sure around the situation in Japan, there was some concern around that. This is actually one of the better performing, safest, as far as those things go. I haven't been down to inspect it yet. David Doherty went several times, and he encouraged me to do that as well. So I figured since I lost all my hair in my first year, we didn't need to. I don't think it has a huge impact on us, but it does generate a lot of tax revenues for that borough, which is Limerick, and it's brought the outlet centers there as well. So I think it's good for the general economy. Yeah, clean energy, clean energy, clean energy. One other question?
What trips do you have planned in the next 6 months or a year for recruiting and alumni meetings and so forth in what cities?
I'm going on vacation in 12 hours. But the question is, where are we headed?
Assuming you're coming back.
Depends on how the rest of the day goes. We go everywhere at this point. I don't know exactly where we're headed. Typically, I can tell you sort of where I was last fall, and it's usually sort of a repeat of that. And we're adding, because we're now beginning a campaign, we'll be adding more and more cities and places and individuals to my travels. And I'm happy to report too that Preston is retiring to a certain extent, retiring fully, half-time at T. Rowe Price, and has offered to take on a lot of the places where I can't get to. It's very important, and I think you'll recognize this as a former student at Hill. It's very important that students see the headmaster. And I always have this feeling that there's an imaginary somebody here that's keeping track every day that I'm not on campus. And then that comes back to haunt us with disciplinary issues or that sort of thing. So until cloning is developed in our new science building, it's important that I'm here, and we've hired a new associate headmaster who will be here a lot. But so I try to balance being away, usually during kids' vacations and that sort of thing. But I am gone for weeks at a time occasionally. So the primary cities that I go to, obviously Philadelphia, New York, do a lot of work in Florida, a lot of work in San Francisco and on the West Coast, Chicago. I spend 2 weeks a year in the Far East in China and Korea and Hong Kong. I visited David. Where's David? Is he here? David Lang. We had lunch last year in Hong Kong. But I have also been known to go to Kentucky and to DC. DC I go to quite a bit. Baltimore, the Midwest, everywhere. I generally don't know where I am until someone tells me. But Preston is going to help me out.
Yeah, my intention is to do exactly what Zach said, is a lot of those cities, since some of you were living in places, Milwaukee, Memphis, Nashville, New Orleans, Albuquerque. I mean, there are a lot of great cities where we may have 5 to 20 Hill alumni. Some of them are current parents, whatever, and he can't be everywhere. Well, we need to have a Hill presence there, more than just a major gifts officer who's asking for money, but someone who actually says, I kind of know what's going on, let's talk about the school, what's on your mind, let's connect.
And one of the things, I may not be able to get there, but we also, and Preston too, we also now have chapters, Christian 11 chapters, 11 or 12 chapters all around the world, mostly in the US, that meet quarterly. So they meet on 3/3, 6/6, 9/9, and 12/12. It's actually invented by our Korean alumni. They do this so that you can always remember when the next event is. And they're usually a gathering at a restaurant or someone's home, or they go bowling. It's more young alums more than anything, but it's a terrific opportunity. I showed up at one of them my first year in New York City. They didn't know who I was. And they said, who's the old alum creeping us out? And then someone said, oh, wait a second, that's the new guy. And then I had to leave. But you should take advantage of those. And they're in mostly major metropolitan cities, but I think we've had one in Richmond, we've had one in DC, they're all over the place as well. And then our admissions office does tours and fairs all over the country as well. So if you keep an eye on our website or Facebook page or Hill Ties usually has a schedule of major events in advance. That would be a great way to keep up with this.
So let me just conclude all of this.
Please.
By saying, personally, I am just amazed at what this class has done. You all know that nothing gets done without great leadership, and while I know many of you worked, David Loring, Tom Northrup, and Ali Transu really made this class come together, both in terms of the attendance, but also the amount of money that you raised, the faculty houses you're going to see. With real faculty living there, they're going to be very, very appreciative of what you've done. So if I leave you with anything, it's you've inspired me, you've inspired the board. We are going to tell your story to other classes and get them juiced up to see if they can match what you've done. But you can't quit here. Now you need to go back, tell the story to people that you know about how the Hill is coming back. Those children and grandchildren of your best friends who are thinking about boarding school, say, look, if you're going to go to Hotchkiss and you're going to the Northeast, you have to go to the Hill School because it's really on the way up. Okay, get them juiced up. And don't forget to continue to put the Hill into your will and your annual, into your annual giving plans, because this is a philanthropic target that's very worthy of your support. And I hope that you understand that after this week, so thank you.
And since Tom Northrup isn't here, I'll channel him for a moment, because I've gotten to know Tom pretty well. What he would say is, you're now used to giving it a high number for the houses. You can just keep giving it that number, and it won't feel like any more pain than it was this time. I know that's what Tom would say, right, Ollie?
He would say culture of giving.
Culture of
We are
giving.
creating a culture of giving.
Donations are oxygen to a school like the Hill. We cannot thrive without it. You've heard that the difference between what we charge for tuition versus what it actually costs is significant. We're stewarding your resources well. Your gifts to the Hill Fund, your gifts to the houses. We are, Preston, the board, and I are working very hard to make sure that the Hill School has the reputation and the caliber that it had when you were here, and that it deserves to have for its legacy. So we need your help. We need everyone pulling in the right direction, and we thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you for coming.